Scott, I've been investing for a bit over 30 years and built up a portfolio of about a dozen properties, including commercial, retail shops, flats and residential homes, including a little bit in a property that you might be familiar with called Hillcrest.
All right, yeah.
I've had some fantastic mentors in the past, including Robert Kiyosaki, who I've met, Steve McKnight, Mark Rolton, just to name a few.
Yes.
However, at just past 60 years of age, as a self-funded retiree, I'm holding some development opportunities that are outside of my scope of expertise.
Yes.
Building 16 one-bedroom flats is not in my wheelhouse, nor is a gated community on 140 acres that I own on the outskirts of Townsville. Who would you recommend to brainstorm and JV with?
Okay, well, that's a good question. So let me just take a step back. How did you acquire these properties? Are they something you've identified in the market, or are they just something you've held for quite a while?
Yeah, a couple of these properties I've held for 15 to 20 years. Always looked at higher and better use of properties when I purchased them. So some of them have got holding incomes with an old block of flats that needs to be knocked down. But the local real estate agents and councils are screaming for one-bedroom bedsits or one-bedroom apartments to service, communities that not got retirement villages in them. That's one property that I've identified.
Yep.
So we've got about 1,800 square metres just behind the main street of original town. It's backs onto the main street, and I own some commercial real estate in that main street, including properties that have tenants like Commonwealth Bank of Australia and Queensland Sugar Limited, which are really good tenants
good
to
tenants.
have.
Yeah, for sure.
And ultimately, the backyards of those properties, I've owned freehold for some years, and gives me an opportunity to develop those individual titles. However, on the wrong side of 60, my property portfolio might be what some people sort of dream of having, but I still don't have the confidence to move forward with building 16 one-bedroom flats as an example on that particular block.
So in terms of your overall portfolio, Noel, is it balanced? Are you putting money in each month? Is it paying you? Does it give you a return?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think the portfolio is worth about 5 mil, and I think we still owe about 1 million on the portfolio.
Yep.
So very cash flow positive at this stage of life. So we're happy to have a very strong LVR in our favour, and live on that passive income that we've been able to build over 30 odd years of investing.
And is there properties in the portfolio that perform better than others that you could say exit and get rid of the 1 million in debt?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Correct. So our philosophy has always been 3 red houses and 1 green hotel. So you might be familiar with that term. And so we are in a orderly sell down of the last of the residential properties as we speak.
Okay.
Two of them are on the market. Those properties up here in far north Queensland certainly don't attract the types of values that we would be talking about in the southern markets, but properties that are worth $200,000 or properties that are worth $400,000 up here. We've got a couple of those, and we've got another commercial property that's coming on the market to downsize and get rid of that million. As you say, it's a bit of a noose around our neck.
Yeah.
We've identified that in our early retirement years, and our super fund holds some of those properties as well.
Okay.
So we're looking to, I think, improve our cash flow position, because we have gotten to 63 years of age and feel very much asset rich and cash flow poor.
Sure. Yep. No, that's fair enough. And let's go back to, so you've identified the ones that you're looking to possibly sell down and get rid of the debt. Now
Yes.
that leaves you with some of these potential development opportunities, or are they in some of the sell down?
No, they're definitely not. We put them aside
Okay.
to keep them for other opportunities to either do a DA on on the on the on the block that's available,
Yes.
and then sell that off to somebody that might have the appetite
Yes.
to build. Um, I've had 3 run-ins with councils in the businesses that I've built over the last 30 odd years, and all of those run-ins have been protracted and expensive.
Yeah. That's what they're there for, mate. They're to make our lives so much easier.
Well, I live on 150 acres, which is fantastic, and we had 11 ticks in 12 boxes to turn it into 25 5-acre allotments over 15 years ago, and we spent a small sum of money that felt very large at the time
Yeah.
to get those 11 ticks in 12 boxes. And the Department of Main Roads contacted us and said that because it was such a large subdivision in a rural area that we were going to need to increase the Bruce Highway to 4 lanes.
Oh, and you needed to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, right. Now, that would have been cheap.
absolutely no problems at all. Or I had the opportunity of putting in a set of traffic lights at about $1.5 million on the Bruce
Uh-huh.
Highway, which of course, as you would well be aware, we had a great supporter at the time. Westpac Bank was very keen on helping us, and I retired from my first business with the anticipation of producing that small lot subdivision, and we found that even with a $2 million input and a $4 million return, that whilst the money was available, Department of Main Roads came along with a big red rubber stamp and said that's not happening
Yeah.
on our watch. So nowadays, we're very fortunate that as you leave Townsville, heading north towards Cairns, you'll see a brand new 4-lane highway. Of course, they were looking for me to be the bunny
Yeah.
to pay for that.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to be involved in that. So that was a good call. Okay. So let me just get clear on your portfolio. You're in the process of selling some down to get rid of the million debt, or you're looking to do that? Are they on the
Yeah,
market yet?
yes, they are.
Yep.
Definitely in the process of that.
Yep.
We feel that we're sort of hamstrung a little bit now that we've stepped back out of our business or businesses that we've successfully run over the last 30 years. We've had 2 very successful businesses in the Townsville area and have been privileged enough to win quite a few awards and have up to 18 staff employed in one of them, and sold it for a 6-figure sum, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
Back in 2006, that was great, and then went into a second business where we prospered with the renewable energy industry, did exceptionally well out of that as well, and then retired at 59 years of age. And now, of course, at 63 years of age, you'll be very familiar with the fact that banks are gun shy when it comes
Yes.
to lending self-funded retirees $1.5 million or something to go and build, say, for example, 16 one-bedroom flats.
Yeah, you're spot on. You're spot on. So I want to delve into that a little bit more. The question I've got for you is: once you get rid of your 1 million in debt, with the portfolio then sort of left at, or whatever it's left at, maybe it's 4 million or whatever.
That's it. Yep, correct.
Can you? Is that giving you enough income to live on at that point?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a very high. Um, uh, yeah, we've got quite a substantial side hustle business running a wedding function facility here on site as well in our
Right.
front yard. We're very pleased to be able to generate $70,000 to $100,000 a year out of a part-time business, which is great, and the the property portfolio produces around about $100,000 a year for us, so that we can share that between husband and wife,
Yep.
to the tune of $50,000 each, and the wedding function centre, which just hires itself out, and which is a passive income style business, because we're privileged to live on 150 acres in a rural area that people want to come and get married here, which is great, and they provide us with an income that only operates for around about 15 weekends a year, which is enough to generate $70,000 a year, with very, very few expenses now that we've built it.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you've set up, very, very well, been very successful in your businesses over the last 30 years. So well done to you. That's pretty good. So let's move on to the question that you started with, which was the development side. So we've carved the normal, let's call it normal, non-development properties out of the portfolio. You're sorting that with the sales and taking the debt down to zero. You've got the cash
Correct.
flow sorted. You've got your side hustle. So now you're looking at what to do with the development. Is it just the two? So 16 one-bedders. And did I see a gated community on 240 acres? Was that right?
On 140 acres,
140,
yeah. So
140, yeah.
yeah. So we have we live just north of Townsville. It was originally projected to be all 5-acre allotments in this area, but UNESCO got involved and told all the councils that 5-acre allotments were no longer acceptable, and that you needed to have smaller allotments to prevent damage to the surface of the soil from people having such things as ponies and horses and trampling down the ground and washing all out to the Great Barrier Reef. So Townsville City Council, in their wisdom, chose to ban all 5-acre allotments, and now we have 1-acre allotments as a more suitable need.
So they've gone to smaller allotments than what was originally there. That is highly unusual when you're talking about environmental impact. But anyway, let's put that to one side.
Yes, absolutely. So Mackay, Townsville and Cairns have all been hit with this protection of the Great Barrier Reef. Apparently, to explain that just a little bit easier, is if you've got 5 acres, people are tempted to have a horse and a couple of ponies, maybe some goats. If people only have 1 acre, they're not going to give up their pristine backyard and lawn to have hard hooved animals, which is the downside. So we have 10 acres around our family home, which is lovely. All fully irrigated, and the weddings are great. But we have 140 acres out the back that's very suitable for a solar farm. And I've been in consultation with somebody that you might be familiar with, Andrew Forrester, has come and visited me, and we've had some consultations about the abilities and the difficulties of putting in renewable energy on a property of this size.
Yes.
And those conversations have been fruitful. However, once again, everybody thinks that somebody would be screaming to meet a person such as myself, who has been in the renewable energy industry for 15 years, has been to Canberra and been to Melbourne to make things happen and find developers that can do it. And then you find out that Ergon Energy don't want it to happen because their power lines are not big enough.
Well, I was about to ask that, like, what's the infrastructure around it? Yeah, okay.
So we have a very strong case. However, even with Clive Palmer being my back neighbour, you might be familiar with who he is.
Yeah.
We happen to have a power station across my back fence, less than you can hit a golf ball and land it into the power station. So you would assume that my property is ideally suited to connect into the Transfield power station, and you would assume, having done a $40,000 feasibility study, which we have completed already, that it would be absolutely ideal, given that one of those 66,000 kVA power poles are on my property.
Yeah.
That this would be a premium property that somebody would want to put battery storage and renewable energy on. And of course, having spent that $40,000 to do that feasibility study, it came up with five ticks in 5 boxes or 5 stars, until you send it off to Ergon and they go, no, not on our watch. We'll have to do too much to the network to take that power.
So does that mean
we're not sure.
So does that mean you can do the 1 acre lots on there now for residential? Is that what it's zoned for?
Yes, so it's not zoned for that. It's zoned for rural, because Townsville City Council, without notifying any of the property owners in the area, have taken it from 5 acre allotments now up to 10 acre allotments.
Right.
And without notification, either written or verbally in any way, shape or form, we now find ourselves on rural land that would require rezoning to complete a gated community.
Okay.
However, that 140 acres sits there as fairly attractive land that's now being developed around by other developers.
If you sold 10 acre lots, what do they sell for in your area?
Not much more than 1 acre, quite frankly.
Yeah.
If you were to throw a dart at a dartboard, my daughter has just bought across the other side of the highway. She's bought an acre for $210,000, and you probably wouldn't get much more than $240,000 for 10 acres.
Right. So you're looking at 2.4. Yeah. After you got to develop them out. And there's no water or anything, so it'd be all septic and rainwater and what have you. So there wouldn't be a huge amount of infrastructure, I imagine, if you changed them into 10 acre lots.
Yes. So you would certainly struggle to get a return because of the length of the roadway and the plans that I did have drawn 15 years ago. It's much more suitable for 1 acre allotments than 10, because your return on investment is significantly more. However, as you quite identified immediately, if you've got to do 1.2 kilometres of Tar Seal Road, it's $1.2 million.
Yeah.
$100,000 a metre.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you can only fit 2 blocks of land on it, which is 3 blocks of land on it, which is no good. Whereas if you can do a rezone and get it put back to the way it was, then there's an opportunity there that you can do. What's happening in Townsville City Council at the moment is there is a brand new retirement village being produced, or what's called a gated community, and that gated community has just been approved by Townsville City Council to be able to have modular homes put on it.
Yeah.
And that has just been passed by Townsville City Council with 300 homes to be put on an area.
On what size land?
It's on 60 acres.
Okay. So even if you could put 300 on yours, I mean, is that the same as rural zoning, or do they have to get it rezoned?
Yes. Definitely Stockland have been involved in that.
Okay.
They have a very big checkbook to enable themselves to make that happen.
Yeah. Because it's just traditionally a different zoning, right? Rural to, retirement. Well, is it caravan park zoning, whatever they call it?
Yes, that's right. The name changes that have occurred up here in Far North Queensland have gone from no longer wanting everybody to live on 5 acres to condensing everybody for infrastructure purposes. Council, of course, has run out of money, so they can't keep extending the sewage lines. They can't keep extending the power lines, so they put all of that cost on the developers, of course, as you're familiar with. And we find ourselves in a situation where we're sitting on 140 acres and looking for the most appropriate higher and better use for it. And I was privileged to work with a lady once upon a time who I don't know if it's appropriate to mention her name, but we'll call her Eileen for the moment.
Yeah.
And she was very proactive with gated communities in the Brisbane area because of the opening up of the restrictions that are applied to a traditional subdivision. And she was very successful with her real estate agency, and I numerous meetings with her and quite a few lunches, and was helpful in teaching her how to relocate homes, which was one of my hobbies that I did about 12 times. Whilst I was running a business and relocating homes, it was good for taking the money out of the business and turning it into a cash cow.
So you've obviously looked into what, because every local authority has different, I guess, parameters of what you can do in different zoning. So in rural zoning in your area, I'm sure you're familiar with whatever that might be.
Yep.
And
Yes.
obviously you can farm, or you might be able to crop, or whatever it is for rural. But you can have things like, I know in some areas they can have things like ecotourism cabins and other bits and pieces. Do you know exactly what you can do in your rural zoning area?
Yeah, well, the front of the property, which is easily accessed with Tarsill Road, is rural residential. So everybody up and down the street is rural residential on 5 acre allotments. We just happen to be the only property that has 5 acres at the front with a letterbox, town water, town power, and we're at the end of the cul-de-sac. So right at the end of the cul-de-sac, you've got this massive triangle piece of dirt that heads off into the wilderness, and it's 150 acres.
Right.
At the end of that cul-de-sac, with a very small triangle, as you would call it in Brisbane, a battle axe style block.
Sure.
In other words, we do have access to the Tarsill Road. We have everything that you would expect for all the other 22 homes up and down the street. It's just that we happen to be at the end of the cul-de-sac, and that was the 150 acres that never got developed by the developer. It was marginal land at best. It's very sedimentary clay, hard in horrifically hard soil in summer, and sloppy white,
Right.
yucky stuff in winter. There's a creek that runs through the property, which is the reason why the developer never bothered to go any further than the end of the cul-de-sac. And we were able to purchase this whole 150 acres 18 years ago for a very small sum of money. $180,000 was hardly a king's ransom, but that small capital outlay gave us somewhere to reside, build a couple of relocated homes on it, and we've always sat now and pondered as to what is the next best use for that 140 acres that's out the back.
Yeah,
As we call
well,
it.
at the back, yeah. I mean, other than getting it rezoned, you got to operate within the parameters of what you can do, which you've probably already kind of come to the limits of, I would suggest, or coming close to the limits of, with if you're going to put demountables or ecotourism cabins or whatever it might be on there. So it's going to come down to, a rezone. And you sound like you're someone who's done dances with councils a few times. I mean, what's your chances of getting a rezone on this, you reckon?
I think we would need a really large checkbook behind us to sway them, and offer the council some form of benefits to the rezone. Once upon a time, I was told that organisations that are much larger than myself, such as Stockland, for example, receive a better hearing than an individual developer, because that individual person is ill experienced, which I'm happy to put my hand up and say that's the case. Building a wedding function centre on the front of the property was $30,000 in administrative fees, noise tests, animal husbandry reports, and noise abatement walls, etc., that we didn't expect, given that we live on 150 acres. But of course, council definitely wanted their $28,000 just to do an MCU, to build a wedding function centre on the front of our property.
Yeah.
And I'm sure without a doubt, Scott, that that some large developer would be able to come up with a higher and better use than myself, for 140 acres that sits just on the outskirts of Townsville, population 200,000 people, with developments happening across the highway. Now that the highway is 4 lanes, there appears to be a new appetite for development in the northern suburbs of Townsville. Basically, as you leave Townsville, the zoning is obviously up to 60 kilometres an hour, then you go to 80 kilometres an hour, and as soon as you hit the 100 kilometres an hour, that's exactly where we are. So we're just on the fringe of the Townsville known suburbs that have got high density housing.
And
then,
what about water? What's the site? You said there's a creek through there, but does the site flood anywhere?
No, it does have 2 dry creek beds that do. We have done flood surveys on the property, but out of the 140 acres, there's about probably 20 acres that goes underwater. But with such things as low-level crossings or the such, it could be mitigated for access in and out during the wet season.
Okay. And I know that Townsville's got, the armed services up there. I mean, any creativity around that with temporary accommodation, or because they kind of expand and contract a lot?
They do. We've got a huge influx, a shortage of housing. Of course, in the Townsville area, it's in the paper every day. And we were, well aware of the RAF, the base of the Navy, now here in Townsville, increasing its regiment up here. And a lot of the town was built around Army and RAF base. Certainly, this 140 acres here that sits at the back of our property is certainly hamstrung by the zoning, which is exactly what you drew my attention to, is that council seemed to have the ability to take away the original zoning of 5-acre allotments and then turn it into 10-acre allotments and call it, instead of being rural residential, they want to call it rural. And even as a landowner, we're not entitled to object to that or reject that. As it occurs at state level, they seem to have the ability to change that without objection. So for somebody that's already spent $75,000 on plans and road drawings and sewage and water, quite a few years ago, I still hold all of those reports in my possession. They're basically useless today because of the rezoning.
Yeah, that's fair. And when was the last time you spoke to council directly about it, like through a pre-lodgement meeting or something like that?
I have not gone to a pre-lodgement meeting with council at all. I've had my own challenges with dealing with the Country Vows wedding function centre that I built when I retired.
Sure.
And we've had a couple of visits from council here, and accused us of all sorts of things, and caused some unbelievable stress to do with the toilet facilities that are here on site. And
you sound like the Australia's version of Clarkson's Farm, Noel. Like you're always getting hammered by the local council.
Jeremy Clarkson and I are almost identical, almost 2 peas in a pod. Yeah. No, I've watched it with great humour. But yes, I came home and retired, and thought, great, let's get our son married in a big marquee at the front of our property. And we had numerous other people, celebrants and caterers and photographers, asking, can they use the facility for weddings? And of course, that was not really predicted in the Jago family. And I built it, and that was fantastic. And then ultimately we decided that we'd put the application into council to make sure everybody was happy. And then all of a sudden, we found ourselves very much in the same position as Jeremy Clarkson. So without exacerbating the conversation too far. We had people here with body cams, and I nearly had to get my solicitors and barristers involved for intimidation and all sorts of things that got really out of hand, because what we had applied for and what we'd paid for was a material change of use to put up Country Views Wedding Function Centre.
Yeah.
And we were told that we were in a flood zone, and we were told to have portable toilets, and that's exactly what we installed, was a portable toilet block with a holding tank.
Yes.
And we got ourselves in a lot of trouble because that holding tank was being pumped out absolutely perfectly legally by Cleanaway. The effluent was being taken away after 3 weddings, and we were found to have installed the holding tank in a flood zone, and we also were then found to be catering, for 100 people, and they felt that that required a sewage system that was capable of dealing with 6,000 litres of effluent, which is absolutely ridiculous and completely wrong. But that's in AS 1547, and of course we all know that when you go to a wedding, you don't necessarily go and do 3 number 2s whilst you're at a wedding for 3 hours. So I was able to get through to council, and after many arguments and disagreements, I had somebody sensible from Townsville City Council come out, and Jeff Woodall was able to reassure me that that their aggressive tactics were to bring everybody into line
Right.
throughout the whole community, and that I'd been caught up in a web or a net because some of our competitors have done things similar to what you could experience or what you would be familiar with. You buy an old property at Mount Tamborine, example. You then invite 300 people to come to a wedding, and everybody uses the 150-year-old septic that's at Mount Tamborine, and that 150-year-old septic, I'm exaggerating, of course, Scott, and that overflows into local creek and causes
Yeah,
effluent
and
problems.
flows back down the hill, mate. Right now,
Yep.
you've gone from talking about Clarkson's farm to I've got these flashbacks of the movie Kenny. Have you ever seen that when he's
Yes,
when he's on the phone
absolutely.
saying, "Hey, I got the
Yeah,
wedding. Are you serving? Are you serving a curry?
Indian.
He's serving a curry
That's it.
because he's got to change his
Yes,
toileting amount." So this is like
exactly.
you're making my day here,
Yes.
but it doesn't sound very fun for
Yeah.
you. How about
Oh well.
can we park this one, because I might have to talk to you
Yes.
direct about that one. It's like it's more than
Mm.
a simple conversation
Yeah.
on that site, and I think a
Yes.
pre-lodgement, because pre-lodgements are a good way to go with council before you have to
Yeah.
pay to do anything. You can have as many pre-lodgements as
Right.
you want. I think
Okay.
that's
Right.
not a bad way to go. But let's come back. What I'd like to turn my chat to is
Yes.
the 16 one-bedders. Can you tell us about that property?
Absolutely. So I purchased a property called Altitude Wealth in the main street of the township of Ayr. Ayr is a thriving community with around about 25,000 people in Ayr and Home Hill, just 100 kilometres south of Townsville. I've got about 6 properties because of the high return in that particular closely held township, and those properties have always returned double figures, between 10 and 15%. So I've always held those properties, and the one that I did buy, the gentleman sold me the commercial property out the front,
Yes.
and he said, "Noel, would you be interested in the vacant block of land out the back? It has a small holding income. We have car parks on it, and it makes $5,000 a year that covers the rates and the insurance, and it gives our staff somewhere to park." I said, "Yep. How much do you want for it?" He said, "Oh, bugger all." He said, "Make it 60 grand or something or other." This is directly behind the main street of the township of Ayr. Queen Street is the main street, and this is McMillan Street. And he said, "There's an old block of flats on the left." He said, "You might be able to get in touch with the owner of that." And I said, "I happen to know the owner. He's not a bad bloke." And he said, "Who?" And I said, "Yeah, it's me."
Yeah.
He said, "Have you owned that? Have you owned the old Vatican Hospital for 15 years?" I said, "Yeah, I have." He goes, "Really?" I said, "You've been my neighbour all this time." I said, "Yep." "I'll be buggered," he said. "I didn't know that." So I've got 800 square metres, which is the old Delta Hospital, which is a 100-year-old rotten timber building that has 7 flats in it,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. $200 a week, and right next to it is 800 square metres. So that gives me 1,600 square metres. And my real estate agent is screaming at me saying, "Noel, please fix the housing shortage for elderly people. The retirement village is not being built. The funders have gone bankrupt in Ayr.
Right.
Ayr is a very wealthy sugar town. It has like more financial consultants and assistants in that town than there are dress shops.
So old money.
It's very old money,
Yeah.
Scott, and it has always been the wealth of the Burdekin. And we're very fortunate that we knew some real estate agents back in the day when I used to sell photocopiers, who took a shine to me and would ring me and go, "Noel, we've got this commercial property. It's been owned by the Tomasio family for 30 years. It used to be the chemist shop on the main street. Do you want to buy it?" And of course, I would get the privilege to buy those things off market.
Yeah.
Those properties that I've acquired over 30 odd years just in the last 10 years in particular, are properties like Better Care, Commonwealth Bank, and Queensland Sugar Limited, a little dodgy company, been around for about 130 years, probably not likely to go bankrupt too soon. So those tenants I love dearly because they're on things like 5+5s or 3+3s
Yeah.
leases, and so they're very secure tenants in those country towns. But the property which I'm sitting on at the moment, a lady from Explore Property, Kylie, keeps yelling at me and saying, "Noel, please, can you develop that block of land, right behind the main street,
So you're
so that
saying
we can get..."
you get 16 units on it, is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
one
There's not
bedders?
there, There's also, there is an opportunity to go commercial downstairs, and 2 times 8, because I've already got 7 on the existing infrastructure, existing block,
Okay.
which needs to be bulldozed and knocked down. It was originally called the Delta Hospital, DELTA. It was the original hospital, which has been converted to 7 flats, um, which I acquired more than 15 years ago.
Okay.
And
And that's
so,
just flats. So did you say there's
just
commercial at the
flats.
bottom? Okay, so there's no commercial at the bottom.
No commercial at the bottom. You could possibly put accountants or solicitors downstairs,
Yeah.
um, and definitely you could do doctors downstairs, and you could do residential upstairs. But the young lady that keeps yelling at me, who I've had a long-standing relationship with for 15 years, is saying, "No, there's nowhere in this town that you can put somebody that's on a pension at 65 years of age or 75 years of age. You're the only block of flats that we keep putting these people into. And my flats have got 2 bedrooms or sometimes 3 bedrooms, which he said is completely useless, because people at that age, whether they be widows, whether they be elderly people with mental health problems, or whether or not they're getting assessed by Better Care or whatever the case might be, they're not in a position to be paying $450 for an apartment. They just want an old flat, or they want a
Yeah.
new flat that's cheap.
And,
Whether they be
and are they, sorry,
women or
no,
men.
are they
Yep.
are they
Yep.
ground level, or is it 2-story on the existing ones that you've got?
On the existing 7 that I've got, there's 2-story.
2-story, and that's a walk up, so there's no
Yeah.
lift. Yeah.
No, correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Just front and back stairs. Yeah.
Okay, so what you could do, so you're looking to say combine the sites, say you bulldoze it, combine the sites, and then
Yep.
if you get some commercial at the bottom,
hmm
and is it a corner block or is it just a straight block off the main road?
Straight block. So it faces McMillan Street. It has an easement down the right for car access,
Yeah.
and it has an easement down the left for car access and walkways. So
Okay.
very, very suitable for your traditional units with car access to the back of the block, down the 2 easements, which can't be built over. Of course, they're roadways.
Okay, so I'm just kind of envisaging at the front you could
Yep.
have commercial with accommodation upstairs, and at the back you can
Yes.
have, maybe you need to do parking downstairs, or maybe you can get away with parking external and 2 lots of accommodation there. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Now, what I'm thinking is that I know you're not specifically targeting NDIS style clients, but
Hmm.
NDIS housing has some unique floor plans, let's call it,
Yep.
where they accommodate a carer. And there's also that across with, say, shared living accommodation, which is in suburbs and areas where it looks like a traditional house, but there's 4 or 5 people in it, and there's a common area, and they've each got a locked up room or what have you. I'm kind of
Hmm.
wondering whether there's you'd have to do some pricing and stuff on that, but whether there's sort of a hybrid between those two models where you kind of got the ability to have some sort of higher care, as in a
Hmm.
carer. You don't need facilities,
Yep.
so to speak, but a carer ability. So say there's
Mm.
Mavis and she's there and she's 90 years old and
Mm.
there's 6
Mm.
Mavises. Well, every now and then
Yep.
someone's going to come and visit Mavis, whether it's a family member or whatever. But they
Yes.
don't all need their own room. Maybe you could have one spare room between 3 or something like that, and then you can actually
Yep.
have care facilities visit and pay you rent at a higher rate and that
Mm.
sort of thing for that privilege. It's just
Yep.
going to take some smart design. Of course, when you're talking elderly people, you're going to have some sort of automated getting up to the second level function, which is going to be a lift or something like that, which is going to be add some cost,
Mm.
right? So
Mm.
you definitely
Yep.
want to have to factor that in. And you'd have to sort of look at that and say, is the commercial rent I'm going to get at the front units for the accountants and what have you offset the lift price or whatever, like, and do that. The other thing too is, can you only go 2 stories or can you go higher?
I have not explored 3 stories in the CBD, but it's definitely CBD. But
Yeah.
regional.
It would be
Mm.
interesting on that because a lot of these towns, as you know, they're not even 2 story. They're kind of 1 story with a huge facade. It looks like it's second level, like an old
Yep.
Western town. Um,
Yes.
and then they kind of like, oh, we build that in, and that's where Jerry lives
Mm.
upstairs, who looks after the bar downstairs or whatever, and it's just kind of
Yeah.
evolved to that. But if you actually look at the
Yep.
zoning, it might allow you to go high. I'm not
Mm.
saying it will, but it would be definitely need to
No.
look at
No.
that.
Yes.
Um,
And the old Delta Hospital, which is now 7 flats, it had a very unusual floor plan where you have individual rooms, which is where sick people were, or maybe people that were critically injured. But then at the end of the hallway, there was a matron's room, almost identical to what
yeah.
you're
All right.
describing.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
And so, if you could imagine, the matron was in charge of 3 rooms, and she would have to attend to those people during the evening
Right.
and dress wounds or attend to. This was back in the war days, of course, and we even have somebody sleeping in the operating theatre of that particular building, which is not everybody's common knowledge, except I was the bloke who put the carpet down, so I know where the drain hole is in the corner of the concrete floor.
Yeah. Well,
So it even had it.
I'm kind of just trying to look
That's
at, like, because I know you said that I know these people don't have huge amounts of money to spend on rent, right? And so,
correct.
and it's
Correct.
very expensive to build. Doesn't matter where you build in Australia, it's
Yeah.
going to be expensive to build. Um,
Mm.
so like,
Most of these people are paying 200 to 225. I don't think anybody in the facility is paying as high as 250.
right?
Some people are paying as little as 195, and we've crept the rents up as we've done the properties up, put new kitchens and bathrooms in. So yeah, I think the top rent that we're getting down there is like 225, and that then constricts your building ability unless you can generate some decent cash flow from the commercial that you're talking about
Yeah,
downstairs.
that's right. Well, if you
So,
so
so, so
if you're looking at 200,000, I was just working sums here, and it looks like so around
yep,
200,000 is rent on 16, right? Something
yep,
like that. Then
yep,
at a 10% yield, you've got
mm,
you got 2 million to spend um,
yep.
on a construction. Now you're going to use that's going to go
Every
pretty
cent of
quick.
that.
It's going to go pretty
Yeah,
quick by the time
absolutely.
you do. And so I'm kind of
Yeah.
thinking, well, how do you maybe you can do some NDIS high care, or maybe you can work with the hospital to have outpatient, you know, um, overnight accommodation
Yeah.
services that's almost like Airbnb, medical Airbnb,
Yep.
right? That sort of
Yep.
thing. I think that
But
there's a solution here, but you have to be a little bit creative about it in that sort of
yes.
location. That's would be my take on that.
Yeah. And look, I've sat on this property now for maybe 5 to 7 years, and there's probably not a night that doesn't go past where I try and think of a higher and better use, which is obviously famous in a lot of good books, from somebody that sold airspace above Tiffany's right through to Steve McKnight teaching me about what's the higher and better use of that particular block of dirt.
Yeah.
You already own the dirt, so what's the better thing that you can do with it compared to parking a caravan on it is not very productive, Noel. However, it's great that you've got 7 flats producing $200 a week.
Yeah.
That's fine, but what else can we do with a vacant block of land next door? Having 10 cars parked on it for $50 a month, which is making $5,000 a year, is not the best use of that
No,
800 square metres.
definitely not. Definitely not. And you have to
So,
do the sums on that to actually say, well, is it worth knocking down the old ones? Because that's you kind of got to look at it, in my opinion, as if I just built the back ones, what does it look like?
mhm,
And if I
yep,
knocked the front ones and did both, like, does it allow me to change the design? Am I just literally replicating the 7 units again, but with commercial? So it's really got to have a heavy lift from the commercial aspect to make it that much better for me to want to do that on that block that's already generating
mm,
an income from an existing 7 dwellings. So
yep,
those are the things that you got to consider on that block for sure.
okay, yes. And coming right back to my original question,
Yes.
who would you think would be appropriate to brainstorm, apart from obviously you're very busy with major projects that don't involve regional towns such as this, and I feel as if I've taken up more of your time than I was entitled to. Um, however, um, I am privileged to have been to America to buy houses with Dempsey and Bonholt. Didn't buy any because the whole thing was a shonk. I've had the privilege of meeting Robert Kiyosaki and read every book that he ever wrote. I've met Kim Kiyosaki, and it's been a privilege to run a couple of very successful businesses and sell both of them. But I still feel asset rich, cash flow poor, and definitely at 63 years of age, now risk adverse. And I might be able to come up with the ideas and go to the council and do the pre-lodgement meetings. Do I want to put $2 million on the table now at 63 years of age, or should I just do the DA and then present that to somebody like Scotty North, who's got a lot more years on his side compared to me?
I mean, that's a good question. I think what I'd like to sort of say as a response to that is that personally, I think you've done exceptionally well in your portfolio, and I can't see you making a bad decision even if you kept on doing what you're doing now, which is collecting rent and getting rid of some debt, right? So I think that that's
Yep.
pretty good. To go to the next stage, I think that you would have to look at how much of that money you want to spend and extend, so to speak,
Mm.
and
Yep.
what your risk appetite is for that, because that could be money as you've experienced in your 150 acres. That can be money that
Mm.
just disappears,
Yes.
without so much of a return. So that you're at a point in life where the question you got to ask yourself is, well, what risk do you need to take versus what you want to take? I mean,
Mm.
you don't really need to take any risk at all, Noel. Um,
Sure.
like you can be quite comfortable doing what you're doing now and not
Mm.
do anything else, which I think is hugely appealing. And at that sort of
Mm.
age, I wouldn't discount that. I
Mm.
also, if you were going to do anything on the development sites, it would be as steady as she goes. I would look at the lodgements. I would talk to local town planners and others in the area. You sound like you're a relatively connected man, so they
Mm.
keep up with those conversations. And one of those conversations one day is going to spark someone to say, "Well, I know an NDIS
Mm.
provider that's looking for something in air, and if we build it, we can do this." Then you can decide if you want to be in the build process or not, or you just get it ready, as you're saying, get it DA approved, and sell it to someone
Mm.
else who wants to do it at that point. I think that the
Mm.
best option for you is to not go outside of your comfort zone at this point in life, and
Mhm.
to not extend a whole bunch of cash that you don't need to, um, when really you're living pretty okay on what you've already
Mm.
achieved, which is really, really quite remarkable.
Well, we did have a couple of trips and a couple of falls, Scotty. I'm not going to tell you that I don't have any skin knees, because I did give my account $1 million to invest in the Australian Property Growth Fund,
Right.
and we'll keep that conversation for another day. But I can assure you that million's gone,
Right.
and I did smash the desk in his office. I smashed my hand on his desk in his office many years ago when we owned 98 Melbourne Street, we owned 11 Eagle Street, we owned the London Wool Stores, and we owned the Westpac Banking Chambers in Concord, and we also owned the ANZ Banking Chambers in Collins Street in Melbourne.
Right.
So there was five iconic buildings that 250 of us all owned, and that was a little bit of awkward collusion, because he took his top 5% clients and introduced them into Australian Property Growth Fund, which we all funded. And so, of course, I'd recently sold a photocopier business for a six-figure sum. So I had a wad of cash in my hand, and I gave him 500 grand, and then I went and borrowed 500 grand. And Australian Property Growth Fund went into liquidation around about 7 years later. So that disappeared off the table. And so the only reason that I slapped the desk, I said, you guys have never actually learned how to make money. You just take it and piss it up against the wall.
Yeah.
I said the other 500 grand, which I took out of my business, I went and bought an old hospital and turned it into 7 flats, and I bought some other buildings, and I've bought some real estate, and I bought 150 acres. And I said, it's all doubled in value, but you guys have achieved absolutely fucking nothing with
Yeah.
my money. And they had the audacity to sit there and go, well, we've got another idea. If you've got any more money, we can. So
Come back for
that
more.
was when I punched the table.
Yeah.
I went, you're kidding. So
I can see how that would have happened.
Yeah. So I left that meeting with Moore Stevens and Troy Popham and Associates, and I was very cranky at the front door, and I said, now I just got to go and make that million again. Fuck, I wasn't planning on doing that at 48 years of age. But I did, and that was fine. And I'm privileged to be able to have gone away and relocated homes and bought vacant blocks of land and put busted arsehole houses on them half a dozen times and replicated that process, which was fun, and put them into small regional towns where you're buying blocks of land for 15 grand and you put a house on it for 30 and you sell the thing for 250.
Yeah.
That was a lot of hard work, and my back's pretty sore and my knees don't have a lot of skin on them anymore, because you can't get workers in those sorts of towns, so you go and do it yourself.
Yeah, it's hard
But
work.
yeah, so nothing wrong with making that million back, but it frustrated me no end, and I guess I've got that scarring, which is bringing about my question of feeling nervous about doing any development at this stage of my life. Although I have these ideas, I'm shit scared to proceed too much further forward with. Happy to go and do pre-lodgement meetings, which is a great piece of advice that you've passed on to me today.
Yeah.
Which you say is free, because doing these development applications, as you're well aware, bloody expensive.
Yeah, well, look,
And
most they can be different rules in different areas, but at least you can do as many as you want, and they're not, even if they cost money, they're not hugely expensive. But what I would suggest to you is, I've seen it a couple of times before where people get to retirement age, they've done very well at what they've done, whether it's a job or a business or whatever. They've got a bunch of cash, and then they hand it all over to someone else who is younger. Perhaps they perceive them as more energetic, and go, right, I've worked my whole life here. You guys go and look after this, whether it's manage it from a financial planner's perspective or do projects from someone else's perspective, when in reality, the person who is of retirement age has been successful over the long term by making calculated and perhaps conservative based decisions. You don't want to get to retirement age and then go and make high risky decisions when your success is on the base of conservative decisions, and
Sure.
and that's would be my biggest concern for you at this point, is that
Yes.
not only do you not really have to do anything, it's okay. I get that you want to, and you're cleaning debt up, and that's all. That's all really good.
Mm.
But by simply the fact of doing something wrong, you definitely don't want to do it with any money that you can't afford to lose. That's what I'll be saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great piece of advice, because I think when you get to this stage of life and you've got grandchildren coming along, and you would like not to be the bloke that's bankrupt in the graveyard,
Yeah.
but Dad did really well up until he did that stupid thing wrong. And I think that's really good words, Scotty, to be frank. We went to 3 financial planners, and I've got to tell you, I walked out of all 3 of them because all 3 of them said, "Hey, Noel, you've done really well. Noel and Vicky, fantastic to see you here. It's great. We've come up with a plan for you. What we want you to do is sell your properties, give all your money to us, and we'll invest it into a managed fund." And I've gone, "You're fucking kidding."
Yeah. Of
That's what
course.
Rob.
Well,
That's what
they
Rob.
don't earn
That's,
money. If they can't earn money on your properties, Noel. That's why they need the
yeah.
money for financial management fees.
I was horrified that that's what Robert Kiyosaki warned you about. That's what Robert Kiyosaki said would happen. And I shit myself, and I thought, well, he must just have never read the book. So we went and made another appointment. The appointments were an hour. They got a whole copy of our spreadsheet. I sent my whole spreadsheet to CEO Tonga, one of your representatives, and I said to CEO, "Would you be able to get somebody to look over this mess that I've created over the last 30 years and see whether or not there's anything that you can see that's glaringly obvious?" And he said, "Look, I'm going to tee up a call with you and Scotty at some point in time in the future." That's great that I've been able to take your time up, because honestly, you've been a lot clearer in your answers to my concerns, and probably some of my mental health issues have occurred because of the fact that you go to see these financial planners and you're looking for a better way of doing stuff. Occasionally we have to put up with an air conditioner that's broken down.
Sure.
Of course, we have to put up with a blocked toilet. Of course, we have to put up with a hot water system that shit itself on a Sunday afternoon, and somebody rings up and says, "Oh, I've got a cold shower." But we've managed that for the last 30 years. It's not unusual in the Jago family for the phone to ring, and we have to deal with that. And we
Sure.
always have done.
Yeah.
It's like running a business where you've got the receptionist that comes in, and, for some reason she says, "Oh, unfortunately, I can't come to work today because I fell pregnant on the weekend," or something or other. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever the case might
There's,
be.
there's always problems,
Um,
right? But I mean, I'll tell you what makes your problems better is that when you have zero debt,
gotcha.
then
Yeah.
you've got real asset that's still increasing, however fast it is in each respective market,
Yes.
hedged against inflation and what have you, with zero debt.
Yeah.
And okay, there's no such thing as passive income because you're actively got to manage the hot water system and the window broken or whatever it might be. But
Yeah.
the option is you sell everything and give it to someone else, and then where does it go? It goes into a funds. It goes into who manages that, and then who manages those funds that they invest in other funds. Like
Yeah.
if
Vanishes.
that's not those aren't bad things. Don't hear me wrong. Like that's not. But you haven't
Sure.
made your money that way. If you're a property
No.
investor, why would you change your strategy now? That's kind of my question to you. And if you've
Yeah.
made all this money previously with managed funds and financial planners, I'd say, well,
Mm.
then cool. You know that business of making that money, then keep going in that way. And I'm saying the same
Yeah.
thing to you here.
Yes.
Why change now? Why, if it's not broken, don't try and fix it. And I think that's probably the best the part of what
Advice.
you're talking about there is that why change something that doesn't need to be fixed.
Yeah. And always with a caveat attached to it is we've got to do something in our retirement to keep our brains active and maintain our level of and I'm not clearly, you might have picked up by now that I'm not somebody that's interested in watching daytime television because we live on 150 acres. So we get up at daylight and we go until dark. It could just be moving the sprinklers, it could be fixing the bobcat, or it could be dealing with the irrigation system at the wedding centre, or preparing for the wedding this weekend by turning on the cold rooms or doing something of that nature.
Mate, if I was in
Which is great.
Townsville, I'd be turning the cold rooms on and sitting in there. And actually, and on that note, you'd probably take your little TV and watch the next episode of Clarkson's Farm. But, mate, Noel, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure
Yes,
talking to you,
absolutely.
and I really appreciate
Thank
you calling in today. And let's be in touch again.
Yeah, look, feel free to use anything that you can glean out of that. By all means, look forward to it. And thanks very much for introducing us to Hillcrest. It's been a pleasure so far.
All right. Thanks, Noel. Have a great day.
Cheers, Scott. Bye.